So today, join with me is Shock for another guest appearance. Shock, you've been on a gigantic boot camp,
Yep.
very long boot camp. You've gone from travel from New Zealand over to Korea, spent time in Korea, went to Europe, did a European boot camp as well, and now you're finally back home. So
hmm
today, what I wanted to really talk about was what are the server differences? What actually are the server differences? Because typically the level of discussion you hear in the community is, this server is better than this server. These people have better mechanics, and it's just like it's so super generic, kind of just surface level kind of conversation. And given that you've been in the shit, you've been in the weeds, getting
Yeah.
getting getting in the thick of it, I thought it'd be good to really have a more nuanced, detailed oriented discussion about what you noticed during your time across all these servers. So I guess a good place to start would be, let's maybe map out the timeline, like how long you spent in each kind of server, and I guess walk us through that, and then we can get into your accounts and get dirty in the details.
Yeah. Okay. So for the timeline, when I went, I wanted to make sure that I did go for long enough that if I weren't good enough to, get the rank that I wanted to, that I would have, time to improve and also just time to, acclimate and play more games. Basically, I just wanted to make sure that there was no excuse of like, I didn't spend enough time or I just like wasn't used to it or whatever. And also it's the kind of thing where like I really didn't want to have to go more than once. Because it's just like you said, it's quite the journey. But I left to Korea on July 1st. And I stayed for it was about 2 months. I think it ended up being like 57 days of playing solo queue. And I left, I think, August 30th or August 31st. It was somewhere around there. And from there, I went straight to EU. I didn't go back to OCE. I just went straight to EU. And so then I would have played there from about the 1st of September all the way till my final day was the 3rd of November. And I think I spent, yeah, it was something like 65 days, so slightly longer. But yeah, it was roughly about 2 months in each region.
Okay, so pretty extensive period of time. So, and I guess also something I want to talk about. You've also had experience in the North American server as well. So
Yeah,
we'll kind of maybe loop back on that later on. So we'll start with your Korean Europe, and then we can maybe reflect on your North American journey as well. So we'll start
yeah.
with bringing up now your Korean account. Now, you were saying how when you went to Korea initially, was that upon the split reset, or was that when you're in Europe?
No, so the split has I think the split would have been out for about a month or so when I first went to Korea. So they were like well in the split. And I think when I got to Korea, the Chow cutoff was already at like 800 LP or something. And as you know, like when the season resets, it starts at 500. So it was definitely like partway through the season. Um, yeah, partway through the season.
So what did you end up peaking in Korea?
Yeah, so my peak rank was 1019 LP, which was still Grandmaster. It wasn't Challenger. Challenger at the time was, I think, 1070, so it's about 50 LP off. I
Wow.
think the very end of the season, Chal ended up at like 1200. And that is like something that is quite important, because there are, I mean, I always see it lots of people like with their challenger screenshots or whatever, and it's from way earlier in the season, and it does make a huge difference, right? Like being challenger at 500 LP compared to challenger at 1000 LP is totally different. So yeah, I think on one hand, like I mean I wasn't good enough to get chal, right? But at the same time I was like really happy with getting 1k LP.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredibly impressive. I mean, I think you raise an important point because what people don't understand is that getting Challenger at the very beginning of the season is completely different to getting it, in the thick of a season, right?
Yeah.
When the ranks have actually kind of fundamentally stabilized. And yeah, but a lot of the time people flex their rank. I was like, I got Challenger in Korea or a Challenger in EU, but it's like, well, when specifically did you get it?
Yeah.
So, I mean, look, I think you should be incredibly proud of yourself, man. I mean, you're 50 LP off
Yeah,
of
of course.
Challenger,
Yeah.
in the middle of a split. I mean, that's no small feat. So getting into your account here, so you played a total of 732 games. You played a wide variety of champions. Now, obviously,
Yeah.
you've been a long-term Casio player.
Mhm.
Casio was here your most played. Now, were you playing that mid bot?
So well, I was queuing mid bot, but I also ended up playing a lot of top. And actually, earlier on when I was queuing, I did originally queue mid top. So I would say probably like 70 to 80% of those Casio games were not mid. Although I think you can actually, if you filter by position at the top,
Okay.
I think you can actually check. How many games.
Oh
Yeah,
wow. Yeah, look at
yeah,
that. Syndra was your most played mid. Wow, that's
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah,
Okay.
so the Cassio I used mainly as an off-roll pick. I will say that, like, and we can get into that a bit more later, that I use Cassio more as like a comfort pick rather than thinking it's like a really solid option in the other roles. I do actually think Cassio bottom top is better than Cassio mid, but I still think Cassio is like not as good as I'm picking her. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you should not play Cassio bot every game, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think Cassio in general as well, even as a mid laner, I actually don't even think Cassio's that great of a mid lane pick. Like, I think you make it work, but I think it's a very difficult champion to make work. And like,
Yeah, I agree.
I think there are drafts that are good for Cassio, but holy moly, like, I think you did well to have a 56% win rate, nearly 57% win rate on Cassio in mid specifically.
Yeah.
Um, in Korea, that's definitely not easy to do.
Yeah, it was definitely as a counter pick. I actually think if you click on Cassio there, it might tell you the matchups I played her into. If you
How do
click,
I do? Oh,
just
oh,
yeah, which is interesting because I picked Cassio into Yon a lot, and I had so much success with this matchup in OCE, and I actually felt, I mean, like I felt like I was having success with it in Korea too, but I just like ended up losing all the games. So I
why
think
do you
that
think
could
that
have
was
just been that
the case?
Yon was so broken that it kind of ended up like that. I'm not sure.
So do you think that this is good the mid game because like you maybe do well on lane and then mid game rolls around, or like what do you think this
Yeah,
was?
I'm honestly not totally sure. I mean, I think that, well, one, the Young players were a lot better, but I actually think a lot of it is that um, Korea specifically is very gank heavy, right? Like the supports and jungles will gank a lot, and so being in a mobile champ against like, Yorn actually has like very good gank setup. So like if you're playing Katsu into Yorn 1v1, like I think it's quite good. But when you play, at the time it was like you'd play Katsu versus like Yon Lilia Leona or something, right? And then you just like end up getting pounded, or Sejuani would be even worse. So there was a lot of those kind of like mid support jungle combos that just ended up being so difficult for a champ with low mobility.
Yeah, because I actually thought you would use LeBlanc as your Yone counter because obviously,
Yeah,
especially I mean, you had looks like you had way more success into
yeah,
Yone with LeBlanc. Well, Yone versus LeBlanc is interesting, right? Because Yone versus LeBlanc, when it comes to the isolated 1v1, is not it's not amazing, right? Like
yeah.
like Yone has good wave clear and a lot of the time can minimize, but when it comes to 2v2s, you just kind of annihilate, right? You have really good gang setup and you have really good kind of 2v2 threat. So that's kind of what I would expect. And I actually thought you would be playing, to be honest, the champ that I actually thought you'd be playing more of in Korea specifically was Zoe. I thought you'd be
Interesting.
playing way more Zoe because Zoe, you have really good mid jungle 2v2. It's, relatively fast paced. It does, it can obviously not super mobile, but like, you're very good at Zoe, I think. And I was a champ. I was surprised to see you didn't really play that much of. Was there a particular reason for that?
Well, okay, first I did actually end up playing more Zoe when I went to EU, but I kind of felt that like Zoe was sort of in a weird spot. Like it felt to me like you didn't really win 1v1 hard against the meta matchups, like the all the ADC mids were quite good against Zoe at the time
Right.
because they just like push you in constantly and didn't really feel like you ever really had a window. I will say that I think I kind of undervalued Zoe though. Like at the time, every Zoe that I saw in solo queue would play like the Ignite Electrocute page, and that kind of felt like playing Katarina to me. Where like you sort of have to have some like crazy shit happen to be useful. But like since then, like I noticed a lot of Zoes recently play like the airy, precision page where they just go for a Q poke and then have all the strong runes, and I think that's made her feel much like she used to be, where she actually was strong in lane and like still good at skirmishing, but wasn't so reliant on just like getting random kills to pop off. So yeah, I probably should have played Zoe more. That being said, again, like something I've really found difficult about Korea, and it's something that is expect like even more so than the other regions, like extremely aggressive. Like it's so hard to play in a mobile champ on this server. I felt so like punished every time I played a champ that had no dash.
So Syndra was your most played. Now Syndra has a little bit of self peel. You have the E. Did
Yeah.
you find Syndra was manageable just because of that E? Or Syndra was just kind of strong in general, and you feel like you could kind of make it work? Like, what was the mindset
Yeah.
of Syndra then? Because that kind of goes against what you just said there in terms of having mobility.
Yeah, so funnily enough, I think that despite me having so many Syndra games, I felt like Syndra was like a counterpick champ for me. Like you can see there that a lot of the champs I was playing into, like if you look at the top four, like Corki, Azir, Asol, Zeri, none
Mm,
of those really have like great gang setup. There is Azir, but like, Azir, Syndra would destroy him so hard 1v1 that I never really got ganked. So I kind of felt like that was just like I would pick Syndra when I knew I would win my lane so hard that like the enemy jungle and support wouldn't even be able to come mid because I just have like so much control and
mm,
so much pressure. Um, yeah,
interesting.
LeBlanc was kind of the champ that I ended up blinding the most. But LeBlanc was actually like perma banned on this server. I had so much success with LeBlanc, especially towards the end. Like I think when I was at 1 KLP, I was something like 6-1 in LeBlanc in the last, like 20 games in my match history or whatever. But LeBlanc's ban rate in Master Plus in Korea was like 53% or something. So it was extremely hard to get the champ because,
Mm.
well, I think she just fits Korean solo queue so well, like insanely mobile, snowballs well, great on side lane, and, didn't really have any losing matchups. Had some that were like so, but there was nothing really bad.
So on that topic, right? You hear a lot about Korea is aggressive, but what does that mean to you? Is that the fact that is it the type of the champions that end up are picked? Like there's more skirmish oriented champions and roam oriented champions and stuff like that, or is it the way they play? Is it the emphasis on grubs? Is it like what is it exactly that you feel as though kind of creates this more quote unquote kind of aggressive nature?
Yeah, okay. So it's a combination of a few things. I'll start with champions. So Korea as a whole, even in lower elos, but especially in higher elos, is like much more like they're much more meta slave than other regions, right? So like you will see the same champs over and over, and like if someone is playing something weird, you can bet that they've got like 10,000 games on it or something. It's very very rare, and so a lot of the time they would pick, just like the junglers or the supports that are getting played in pro play over and over. And so you'd see just like the repeat, like in the support role or in the jungle role of like, Lee Sin, Zinzal, Viego, or like the Nautilus, Leona, Rel sort of thing. And definitely Korea tends to prefer like the ganking junglers and the roaming supports as opposed to like full clear junglers and like range supports. I did see some range supports, but like as a mid laner, it's much easier to play against something like a Karma than it is to play against like a Nautilus. Whereas when I went to EU, there was like many more range supports. I saw lots of Seraphine and Janna and stuff, and I actually do think these champs are pretty good. In fact, they might even be like better than melee sports in a lot of situations, especially as a counterpick. But specifically for the mid laner, I think it's so much easier to play when the enemy team is a range support. Like I'm so happy when I see range support, even if it's gonna suck for my bot lane. I know that it's gonna be way easier for me to play the game. So that's probably the
Mm.
biggest thing for mid is that the support and junglers are picking more aggressive champs. There's like you're never gonna see like Evelyn's or something. And the meta champs I think do make a pretty big difference as well, because a lot of the time I felt like I would get free wins in Europe because I'd be playing against someone who's playing a champ that honestly just like wasn't that good. Like I felt like if I were playing a meta champ and someone were playing something off meta, that it was just like a free win. But when it was in Korea, like even the players that were like lower skilled, if they're playing a meta chat, a lot of the time could be really hard to punish.
Mhm.
Like for like Yon, I think is a really good example. Obviously, they're like Yones at 1 KLP and like the pro level Yones were really, really good. Like they're really hard to punish. But it was honestly still quite hard to punish Yones at like 500 LP. Like I remember changing my ban to Yon like fairly early, because I was just so sick of it. Like it felt like even if I was like way better than my opponent, that I just couldn't get through like the insane amount of sustain. And it just like wasn't really worth it. So yeah, I guess to summarize all that up, Champions was definitely a big part of it. And then it's comboed with definitely I think Korea is much better, I guess, at realizing when people are like out of position, I guess because I've like tested their limits and so much. I didn't really see like an over prioritization on like grubs or invading or stuff, but it was more just like, you knew if you lost flash that you were gonna get like camped into next week. You know what I mean? Like they would just be there constantly. So Korean junglers felt to me like they were more willing to sack camp efficiency in order to make plays happen. And the supports, I mean, they don't even play bot lane. They just play mid lane. It's so annoying.
So it's interesting what you said there because this is the complex nature of Korean solo queue from what I understand, right? What you've got is like a microcosm where it's like everyone has kind of like tacitly agreed about
Yeah.
the way they want to play the game, right? So
Yeah.
it's like engaged supports in isolation. If you play like engaged supports, a lot of like, for example, say in NA or EU, from what I've seen, yes, they can be picked situationally, but if you don't have comps that kind of like, or champions that can leverage that kill threat, like if you have Rel, for example, into
Mhm.
like a Senna, but then you have like a Shyvana jungle, it's like,
Yes, definitely.
what is that going to really do? Like, we can't leverage that kill threat. So it's almost that there's like this. It's like everyone has like kind of tacitly agreed. It's like, okay, wouldn't you rather have all this proactivity? We can all just explode the game. So it's kind of like a game of It's like if we pick like Viego, Leona, LeBlanc,
Yeah.
and then they don't match, and they play like Oriana, Senna, and Evelyn. It's like the game is in your control as the aggressor,
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
So no one wants to be on the other side of the coin where it's like, oh, let's play like a Karma or whatever, Seraphine, whatever. You know what I mean? No one wants to be on the receiving end of that. Everyone wants to be the person that is in control of the game and lose on their terms. And so it's almost as if like, yeah, everyone's kind of agree, and that's kind of been the culture inside Korea, right? Like that's kind of been what they've all decided upon. So it's not that any of these picks in isolation is strong; it's the way they kind of combine together to kind of create threat. It's almost as if like Korean solo queue, they have a really deep understanding of like engage and threat, and understanding like the importance of just like all going in, like chain CCing, like just killing someone, like that beat them to the punch mindset. And I think this is all piggybacking off the fact that they have a heavy emphasis on execution. Because think about it, if you don't execute these fights well, right? If the junglers don't trust their solo laners, or the junglers don't trust people to actually execute and play the fights well, then they're going to be more inclined to be like, fuck it, why don't I just play Evelyn? Why don't I just play, like a jungler that is more like revolve around me? So I think that there's an element of this. You see this specifically, I think, a lot I'm not, again, this is a generalization, and feel free to call
Mm.
me out if I'm wrong here, but let's say in a region like OCE or even NA, right? A lot of junglers, like, it's like, well, why would I play Xin Zhao and flip it, whether or not my support just might lock in like a Seraphine or a,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then my solo lane probably won't even be able to leverage my lead. The game's going to get stalled out. Why not I just play Kane? You know what I mean? Like it's almost if there's like it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. The junglers probably tacitly don't necessarily trust their laners, but the laners then are gravitated towards playing particular champions. The laners are gravitated toward playing particular champions because they know their jungler's not going to probably be inclined to pick something that can leverage that aggression and that threat. So I think that like it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like what do you think about that based off your
Yeah.
experience as well across NA as well?
Yeah, and I think I definitely agree. Like I know junglers especially get like really tilted when they, lock in some jungler that wants to make plays and then they end up with, some sort of mid that just wants to like AFK farm or like wave clear, doesn't have any setup, can't skirmish or whatever. And then same thing with support. Like a lot of the time, again, these like range sports can be really powerful. Like I think, one that you mentioned there was like the Seraphine plus the Xin Zhao. Like Seraphine, I think is actually really good with Xin Zhao in skirmishes, but like Xin Zhao can't play through the Seraphine lane, right? He'd have to play through something else. And I think that's, yeah, again, really annoying, especially because like jungle tends to be, and I'm sure you've noticed this, tends to be one of the roles that's picked first in solo queue. Like there's kind of like a generally agreed on like pick order of like you pick your ADC first and then like jungle and then it's like either mid or support and then top is always last. And so like jungle has like a pretty difficult time of like they need to pick something that can kind of do anything without really knowing what the rest of the team is playing. And so like even though I hate playing with like full clear champs like, well, yeah, Kane is one you mentioned, I kind of get it. I get why junglers do this because it's like, well, you want to take as much agency as you can for yourself, and like you don't know if you're loading into game with players that are confident in their role, or maybe you've just got like a bunch of players who are off row and playing champs that like aren't good or whatever, and like yeah, that sucks.
Yeah, no, I think and what you said there about the meta, and this has been something that is quite controversial, but I just frequently say it's like meta above Master Plus matters a lot. It just
Yeah.
does. It just does. And like people say, oh, but there's this one player that plays this champion and he got challenger with this champion. I'm like, you got to realize, like, if you're getting challenger with an off-meta champion, there's either one or two scenarios. That person is either unbelievably like godlike on that champion, like so
Yeah.
good, like that you can't even wrap your head around it, doing things that the average person is not going to be able to do, and the amount of time put into that champion would be unbelievable. Or two, it can just be a good meta for that champion. Like you can have these slivers in time. Like for example, let's take a champion like Rumble. Like sometimes you'll
Mm,
see like Rumble mid players, just they get like top 10 randomly. And then you'll get another meta where like Rumble is a shit. And then all the Rumble OTPs, they go back down to like Grandmaster. And so it's like, it's not about like when you're playing these off meta champions, they fluctuate massively in terms of their effectiveness in solo queue. And I think that a lot of people don't, it's a tough pill to swallow. It's like, oh, but it's possible because that person does it. Well, sure, but you got to recognize that they're outliers. They are outliers among, already outliers. Like if you're a challenge player,
yeah.
you're already an outlier, but you're an outlier among outliers. Like they're so detached from that. They're so detached from the norm. And I think that in Korea, it's like, well, they probably have such a deep respect for the difficulty of the game, I reckon as well, that it's like, well, if by playing off meta, I'm making the game so much harder than it needs to be. The game is already so goddamn hard. Why not
Yeah.
just play the champions that are strong? Because it's like they want to juice every little bit of advantage they can get. It's like, why would I play something that's suboptimal? And I think that's like a different mindset, I think, as well. Like in the West, I feel like I think there's like a well, what do you think it is? Like, why do you think there is this emphasis on like playing the meta in Korea versus EU in your experience?
Yeah, so I think it is kind of what you said. Like, I think there is some sort of like cultural thing where like, or like league culture specifically, where they've kind of said like, okay, well, the game is fundamentally not balanced, and so like, why would you ignore the advantage you can get from picking a stronger champion? But I actually think a lot of it is like, it feels very like benchmarky in a way, right? Like your champ has to be able to do this or it just can't play the game. Like the
Mhm.
example I would give would be like, okay, like if you play like your off meta pick or whatever, and I did play against like a few like people that were playing off meta, things like there was this really good Ekra mid player I played against, this really good Diana mid player I played against, but it was like, okay, if you're a champ, just like let's say you load into game against the Blanc. If your champ just can't play the lane against the Blanc, like you just like can't get through the lane without being like down like too far in CS, or like you've lost plates, you've lost prior, whatever, just like forget about it. Like it doesn't matter if your champ is really good starting at like 15 minutes or 20 minutes, because it just doesn't matter. Like the game is over before we get to that point. And I think that, in the other regions, a lot of the time, especially outside of like challenger or even high challenger, you are going to get away with these greedier picks. Like I saw, for example, on EU, I played against some, this was before the rework, some people who were playing like Swain and stuff. And, like I think Swain, especially into like melees, or like if you do manage to get into the mid game, is actually really good. But you just can't. Like if your opponents know what they're doing and they are playing the meta champs, they're going to force you to also play champs that can, compete with that. And like kind of coming back to that, like off meta champs that I saw in Korea, there were some champs like Diana who, for example, would be able to, even though they maybe weren't as good at some things, if they took, say, like sudden impact and shield bash and bone plating, they actually were able to compete in the laning phase. So at least they like passed that first benchmark. And like, yeah, maybe it's not meta because it's not as powerful for other reasons, but it could actually be played. Whereas it felt like the champs that were weak in lane had like literally no chance of being played, because I mean, it would just feel so bad, just like playing it just felt so awful.
Yeah, totally. So, there is also arguments to say that, because Korea specifically has this like heavy emphasis on kind of playing a particular way,
Mm,
that they are kind of blind to other opportunities. Like I know LS has been kind of vocal about this. I had a good conversation with LS recently, but I know he's been vocal in the past about like people miss opportunities to play unique picks that could very well be good, but because you've got the blinders on, you're thinking, oh well, this is the meta, this is what we've always done. Like you miss opportunities, and I do think that is an advantage in my opinion. Like if you even think in Europe, like you think of teams like G2, like they were
mm,
always playing things that were more intelligent and made more sense. But obviously, again, there is they're maybe not as good as playing the meta, and maybe Korea can beat them anyway. But my point being is that I think that there is a downside. Like there is a downside to this heavy emphasis on the meta. Like for the most part it works, but there's probably going to be those moments where it's like, holy shit, there's like an obvious pick that probably exists that probably could be played, but it's going to take longer to get figured out because there's that less creative element. Like, would you tend to agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree that it is a disadvantage. I guess the like what you're kind of weighing up is like, okay, like if you have some like super niche champion that requires like a lot of time investment and the situation only comes up every so often, like is it actually worth investing time into that as opposed to like investing more time into the champs that are strong and potentially getting good at them, or spending that time literally just working on the game itself. And I think that's like a really hard thing to judge because like, okay, even if like let's say that you spend like a ton of time like working on this champ and it's absolutely broken in this like super specific scenario, if that like gave you a win in a really important series, like you could argue that that was like insane, right? Like let's say for example it won you like game one of the world final or something, right? Then like on face value, no matter how much time you put into that champ, like it seems super worth it. But like at the same time, if you're just then if that champ is just banned next game or now in like upcoming fearless draft, like you don't get to use it anymore, like if you're now weaker at everything else as a result, what does it really do for you, right? Because ultimately it was only one win. So like yeah, I agree. I guess like I see both sides of it. Like Korea
Yeah,
probably thinks like, okay, there's just like a little point, we should just like work on the standard stuff and like the fundamentals and everything. At the same time, like maybe if you're weaker like an ANEU, maybe then you should look for draft advantages and pick things that aren't normal.
I actually want to quickly talk about this. It wasn't what I was planning on talking about, but like Casio, right? So
Mm.
Casio, I believe, as a champion, again, maybe controversial, but like I feel like the kit is so outdated. I feel like it's an outdated kit. Like you think about the champions that are coming out now, like Aurora. Aurora
Yeah.
is like this atypical like new age mid laner, right? It has
Hmm.
it has mobility, it has wave clear, you have like setup. It's just such a beautiful kit. Like it does absolutely everything. And like I just feel as though champions like Cassio's kit, they would never really be released anymore because you have no wave clear, you have no mobility, and you're low range. Like the champion, it's so niche, and this is the difficulty of champions like Cassio nowadays. Like I get people ask me, should I play Cassio, and I'm like, well, the challenge is this: there are very few games where like the stars align where like Casio is genuinely a good pick. But to make Casio work, because her skill cap is so high, you need to get a lot of games. So
Yeah.
you're going to have to learn Casio in a wide variety of difficult games and really pay hardcore attention to the details, min max your micro and get creative. And yeah, sure, there's people out there that make Casio work, but it's a lot of time investment for a champion that is going to be suboptimal in many, many, many scenarios. And so it's weird because now what you've got is this dynamic where it's like League is already a hard game, right? League is already an incredibly difficult game. There's all these skills that you've got to develop. By playing a champion like Cassio, you're literally putting the game on hard mode on like what
Mm.
85 probably percent of your games. Like the games are getting
Yeah.
really, really
Yeah.
difficult. You make one mistake, you're done. And it's like at that point, it's like, why would I just not play LeBlanc? Why would I just not play Syndra? Why would I not just play Ari? Like these champions are just like way more suited. Like in general, they allow you to learn the game more effectively. And so I think like I guess what I'm trying to articulate is that there's like this really toxic kind of interplay between it's a champion that requires a shit ton of mastery to make work, but then you're going to have to play it in games that are legit like borderline unwinnable. So
Yeah.
many of those games. It's like such a terrible learning journe.
Yeah, getting the
Um,
mastery is going to be extremely frustrating.
and that's like that's kind of time back to your point in Korea. It's like, well, we could spend all this time, min maxing Casio, this niche pick, but it's like, what happens if we just spent all of that time just like getting better at LeBlanc, or all that time getting better at like a champ that's like going to be consistently in the meta over the years?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is. And like I said, there are arguments for both sides. Like there is probably a point where like putting one extra game on the Blanc has so few diminishing returns that like it's just not worth it anymore. So yeah, I guess I see both sides. I want to real quick come back to like what you were saying about the kits thing, especially with like the new champs being released today. I think one thing that I think a lot of like champs with bad kits, like Casio, or like having an outdated kit, they can be fixed by still being like very good within their niche,
Mm.
or just through like numbers, right? Like just to, this will be dumb, but like imagine if you just quadrupled Casio's damage, right? Wouldn't matter how bad her kit was. If she did 4 times the damage, she'd
Right.
be the best champ in the game, right? And I think like one thing that I especially noticed, and a lot of the time I get questions about, is that there are a lot of champs, especially as they're like new and like updated or reworked and released, their kits are so bloated that they end up being good at everything. And so, like, an example or a couple of examples I can think of is people always ask me, well, what do you think about Victor? In his current state, and I think Victor is like not bad. Like I'd say he's like a very solid like B2 champion. He's just completely fine. But the thing is, it feels like there just really isn't much point picking Victor over Syndra because doesn't really have a niche. Like I'd say Victor probably like has a ever so slightly stronger laning phases than Syndra, and is probably scales a tiny bit better as well. But it's like Syndra has a comparable laning phase and scaling while also having, incredible gank setup and, being much more consistent, I think, and,
Sure.
being able
Yep.
to skirmish and like, having more agency, has like more, I guess, like reliable self peel. And again, it's like, okay, well, if Syndra were really good early game, right, and had all these things, and she was like your premier anti-mage early game, like she used to be before her rework, and then Victor was kind of like your anti-mage that went to the late game because he just scaled super well, then there was like a clear reason to like pick one over the other. But I think, the problem a lot of the time with like champs like Cassio is it's like, okay, well, for all the weaknesses that Cassio has, like short range or like lack of mobility or whatever, she should have something that she's really good at. Like she should do a fuck ton of damage, or she should be like insanely good at like controlling, short range fights. But then it's like, okay, well, if we look at all of these, it's like, okay, well, champs that are like weak in lane but do damage later on, like I would say Syndra like actually out damages Cassio in a lot of fights late game, right? And then also I think that like, okay, well, if you're looking to deal with people that are short range, like maybe we should pick Talia, because I think Talia scales well as well. So it's a real problem that Riot has now, where they kind of have this like power creep that, well, each new champ has to kind of be stronger than the previous one to make it worth playing. But you've got to the point where like old champs kits kind of have to be updated either numbers wise or rework wise to compete, because most of the new champs previously they would have multiple weaknesses and then like multiple strengths. Now it feels like they have a ton of strengths and they might have one weakness. Like Aurora, for example, she is really good in lane, mobility, scales well, all these things. I'd say her one weakness is maybe she suffers against range laners, right? But that is like one weakness out of a million strengths. And it makes it really hard, I think, to justify playing weaker champs when you compare it to some of the new releases.
Yeah, no, it's well said. There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot there to unpack. I mean, I feel like I could talk about this for hours, but like, I think that there are major design flaws now with like, yeah, what you said. Like they either need to rework a bunch of champions, or they need to make some massive changes to like numbers, because yeah, ultimately you're just getting this weird discrepancy where, or actually what I'm actually noticing is that in order to fix some of these kits, they're just botching their numbers, but then it kind of takes away from what the fundamental identity of the champion is. Like,
Mm,
so I want to take an example like Corki, right?
yeah.
I think Corki is one of the most poorly designed champions. Like, I think it's so dumb because
The
what you,
rework, you mean?
the rework, yeah. So
Yeah.
now removing package, it has what is Corki's defining factor? Like you're like, I mean, like think about it. It's just the most generic, boring kit. And in order to make Corki, it either has like one or two things. He's either completely like shit and useless, and no one can play him because he gets outranged, he'll get outpoked, he'll lose to mages, lose to assassins, whatever. Or he becomes a stat check monster where he just
Mm.
stat checks everything because the kit is so like basic and so shit. So like by removing the package, now what you've got is, I mean, look, I think the package was also weird as well for Corki anyway, but at least it gave it a defining factor. Corki now is just the most. It's so difficult to balance. Is this really weird? It's in a really weird spot where like it's either broken because the stats are dumb, or like, and just make it a stat checker, or it's like useless. And you also see this, I think, with I think Swain.
Mm.
Swain is, I think, I think just if you're just really objective about Swain's kit, it's really bad, right? Because your W, right? If you think about the Swain's W, it's this like very unreliable, like low damage. It's basically not even an ability, right? It's a very, very low
Hmm.
damage ability. You've got the E, which is a relatively hard to hit mid range ability versus competent players. It's very difficult to land. And as the player base is getting better, it's getting harder and harder to land. Then you've got this low range kind of Q poke ability, and then you've got like this ultimate that basically incentivizes you to get into the action, but you have no gap closer in your kit. Okay, you've got no mobility, and then so you're what are you? You're essentially like this like your E and your W don't really, in my opinion, kind of synergize very well with. I mean, E kind of with Swain's kit, but the kit is so it just doesn't make sense because you would need something to make up for the fact that you have no mobility, low range, and you want to keep people in combat. And so now, in order to make Swain work, they've basically now made him such that the Q is very strong for lane. So you have to play him kind of like a lane bully. So like,
Yeah.
what are you? Like a lane bully that then transitions into mid game team fighting. So what are you? Are you a mid game skirmisher? Are you a lane bully? But if you're a lane bully, then the W and the E just don't really make sense. So like, I just think that the kit is it's fundamentally just all over the place. Like the champion, it's like what is the direction of that champion? It needs something else. It needs some sort of like it needs some sort of repositioning tool. It needs some sort of more reliable CC, or let's just tone down its laning strength. Maybe give it some more durability, some way to minimize lanes, and
Hmm.
make it a hardcore definitive mid game spiker. Like it actually feels like me with Swain right now. Like the way I view it is that if you don't get shit done early as Swain, you don't like leverage your lane bully strength with your Q, you just fall off a cliff. Like, yeah, sure, if the stars align in a beautiful 2-3 item spike team fight, but like that's so unreliable because most of the time you're just going to get kited. Like, unless you're versing a very, very particular composition, you know what I mean? So it's like it's just super,
Yeah.
super niche. So like what you've got is this conundrum where it's like you either need to rework kits to make them more versatile, or what you need to do is you need to like give them, in my opinion, a much clearer identity, like you're mentioning with Casio.
Yeah.
If Casio is this hyperscaling champion, then why does champions like Syndra like out damage it, or champions like
Yeah.
have it
Exactly.
on lane as well? So it's like you need to give it like a defined strength or make it versatile, not have like this weird intermingled like what is it? Like what is the kit about? Like what is Corki? What is Swain? They don't really have, in my opinion, like a very clear direction. So I think there are some major challenges. You're right that like Riot gonna have to face, and I think they have done really well with certain champions. Like I think Hui like was a really good like introduction.
Hmm.
I thought Hui was a good champion because I think the kit it obviously has an identity of like just the El Clasico AOE team fight oriented, kind of mage, and its strength over like the Syndra and Victor is that it's just got way more like utility, way
Yeah.
more AOE. Like it has the more utility, more AOE. So it's like really great at team fighting. And even if you look at like Azir's kit, like even Azir, even though it is an overloaded kit, like it has like some defining factors that like the R is just such a defining factor. Like it has a unique thing that it can play around. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Maybe we're just ranting at this point, but I think
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I
this
think I agree with a lot. We probably could talk about this literally all day, so we should go to something else. But I just to wrap it all up, I definitely agree with like the direction thing because I even think that some of these champs previously had good directions. Like I remember ages ago when Swain first got reworked, he was like insanely broken, and I can't remember what exactly did it, but he had like the most ridiculous scaling. Like I'm not sure if he just had like a giant AP ratio on everything or if it was like the soul fragments
mm,
made him super broken. But I remember him just thinking like he released and like, yeah, he was weak in lane, but man, if you got to like 40 minutes versus Swain, the game was just completely over.
that's what it should be. That's what it should be, in my opinion. Like it should be the other way around. It shouldn't be that you have a weak lane and then you like drop off. It should be that you have a weak lane and kind of pop off in the mid game, rather than I got to get ahead and snowball and then
Hmm.
and like get to Rylai's and win a team fight. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. Just I think there's something there. I mean, again, we'll talk. We'll probably touch on Swain another time. But
Yeah.
back to solo queue. So overall, we've spoken about meta, champions, whatever. But I would say, in terms of your skill set, what were things that you, I guess, learned about yourself as a player, maybe your weaknesses and things that you needed to improve upon? Like, what do you think you needed to be better at to kind of definitively push into like mid chow?
Yeah, so I think, well, one of them obviously was champ pool. I think that like there were certain champs in the meta, especially in the 80 carry mid meta, that I wasn't that good at. Like, when I first got there, the meta was like Trist Corki, and then the meta after that was like Zeri, Lucian, Corki, or something. I can't remember. Anyway, there's a lot of champs that like I was kind of like decent at, or maybe even good at, but like definitely not in my like top five champs. And I kind of felt like they sort of had to be in order for me to play at that level. So champ pool was definitely part of it. In terms of like actual gameplay things, I think things I definitely could do better is side laning. It's kind of funny because I always thought I was like really good at side laning, but compared to a lot of the people in Korea, I definitely don't think I was. Like, I think that in Korea, you really get punished hard for being out of position on the side lane. Like, if you don't have, like, the proper vision, or you've overextended just a tiny bit too far, the support will come kill you, for example. Or, like, if you roam, like, a wave too early, like, that'll be punished by, the enemy mid will start knocking on your tier 2 tower or whatever. I just felt like side laning was punished, like, really, really hard. Um, Also think just like the thing is, like, these are fundamentals, so like they're always going to be, you can always be better at them. I think skirmishing and laning kind of like, again, I think these are things I'm actually good at. Like, I would say that laning is like probably my best skill, and I wouldn't say that like for the most part I felt like out laning Korea. Like, I actually felt like my laning was very competitive. But when I played against like really good players, like when I played against like Scout or Rookie, and like these level of players, it kind of felt like, yeah, I don't really belong in the same game as this guy. You know what I mean? Like, they're just like, my laning is good and their laning is world champion level, as just like that next level above mine that is making this game feel really difficult. And I think that's like another thing that happened to me a lot on Korea, or at least a lot more. Like, I never really felt like an EU, even, and I'll talk about this a bit later, but even when I played against some of the like more well-known players and streamers, I never really felt like I was outclassed or like I was in a game I didn't belong in. But I definitely felt that in Korea. I get games where like there's a total of like 4 world champions in the game, and like I'm just not as good as a player as the people around me, which was like a really good feeling. Like, obviously it felt shit feeding, but like I felt so happy that I was so gapped.
So what so you talk about Rookie and Scout, like
Yeah.
what were some of the things you noticed immediately with Rookie and Scout? Like, what was different about them? I mean, obviously
Yes.
skirmishing is one thing, and like
Yeah.
I think skirmishing has an infinite skill cap and ability use, and that makes sense to me because they would have more experience. But like laning, because I would consider you a very good laner. What did you notice in laning that they did differently and better than you?
Yeah, so I think I mean, okay, obviously you can say like the classic of like they did the little things way better sort of thing. But I think, one thing that they're really, really good at is kind of like forcing you into like bad positions in a way. Like, for example, you might have some sort of fundamental like punishing cooldowns, right? Like when your opponent uses a cooldown or whatever, you try and punish it. Well, you force a trade, or you zone them off the wave, or whatever. And like, obviously, like as you get higher elo, like people tend to like waste their cooldowns less often, so you've got to like find ways to force them out of them. Like you might position aggressively on a creep and force your opponent to use a cooldown. But then when I played against like, especially like Scout and Rookie, I noticed that they would kind of like forcing cooldowns out of me even when like they shouldn't, almost. You know what I mean? Like, they were very willing to take risks and rely on their skill. Like a really basic example would be, they would walk up and like, if I hit the skill shot, then like they would, be forced back. But if I miss it, oh boy, like I'm gonna feel that for the next 5 or 6 seconds. So a lot of confidence, I think, was one, and I guess like a lot of willingness to just like fight even from level 1 in order to make sure that you get some sort of lead. And because it really doesn't take much, like if you manage, for example, to dodge like one extra skill shot at level 1, and that means you get like a prior, which means you get level 2 first and level 3 first, and like because of that you get better trades, and suddenly you've got like more gold on your first base, and then from there it's just like a stat check.
It's just a stat check.
So
Now, it's
yeah.
so funny you mentioned that. I want to show you a clip here. And
Okay.
this clip was something that got sent in my Discord. I spoke about this on the podcast, my podcast. But essentially, what you see here, this was Faker versus Chovy. Yeah, so essentially what this was Faker versus Chovy at
Oh
Worlds.
yeah, I've seen this one.
Yeah, and so this is kind of piggybacking off what you said, and so my argument that I spoke about when I spoke about this couple on the podcast is that this is what you're describing here at the very highest levels of League of Legends. What you get is it's not just about playing high percentage League of Legends; it's about doing things that catch the opposition off guard, trusting your ability to outplay mechanically. So if you take a look at this here, right? Let's just go back here. This is like he's just believes he could probably sidestep that charm. You know what I mean? Like now, obviously that's
Yeah,
grief now because he took that really bad chunk. But imagine in an alternate reality here where he goes in, takes that trade because Chovy probably wouldn't have been anticipating this. Chovy probably would have thought Faker's just going to chill under tower, last hit these as per usual. Maybe use E reactively to avoid a charm, whatever. But what this does is psychologically, as you know, like it's like it's putting now Chovy on edge. It's like what the fuck? Like why do we do this? And because you've caught them off guard, you actually have the advantage when it comes to mechanically outplaying. But obviously Chovy, stayed resolute and hit the charm. But this is what you mean. Like, it's like this is you in solo queue versus like rookie. You're thinking, and say you're the Ari, like why would he do that? But
yeah,
if Faker dodges that charm, then what you've done, you've just bent all of Chovy's cooldowns and you can just freely CS under tower. You've
yeah.
relieved pressure and you create an advantage. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Like it looks int because like both these players are like extremely high level, but if there is a skill gap here and that charm misses, like that's massive. Like he keeps all his health, all the mana's gone. Potentially you can even hit E2 onto him. Like, yeah, that's one of those like tiny micro skill checks where if they're against a weaker player, like the game. I know it seems weird, but the game like explodes right then. Just from that tiny little trade.
Yeah, totally. And that's exactly what I mean. And that's what you mean. Yeah. So like I think that there are levels to this game that and I've been talking to so AJ is a challenger player in NA that he's a coach for my program. As you know, you've probably spoke to him in the
Yeah, yeah,
program.
I've talked to him.
And he talks about how like one thing he's noticed with these very, very high level players is that they can do everything in a way where it feels like their mental stack isn't overwhelmed. So it's like they're trading
Mm,
well, they're CSing well, they're never dying to get like they're doing everything while it's occupying like maybe 95% of your mental stack and it's maybe occupying like 70% of their mental stack.
yeah, right.
And that only comes through like just versing better players. Like you just have to
Yeah,
verse
for
like
sure.
imagine in a world for you, Jock, where you're versing rookie and scout every game.
Yeah, it would be insane.
Like how good you would get. Like you would just that's how you transcend. That's how you get to that next level. Um, okay, so I want to move on now to Europe. You moved on
Hmm.
from Europe. Now, I guess a good place to start would be you had two accounts. You had one that you were kind of
Yep.
playing on stream, off stream. I
Hmm.
guess a good place to start would be what was your peak rank? I mean, I guess
Yeah,
you here was this it?
yeah, yeah. So that was my peak rank, 524 LP. I got to Chal, and then I just said I'm gonna stop playing because I've played so much League in the
Yeah,
last 4 months. Yeah, I was just gonna get Chal and stop playing. So obviously, caveat that is early season Chal, right? Like obviously 500 LP Chal is not what a regular challenger would be. It is kind of hard to say because there were big LP changes this split, which meant that like challenger normally fills up after a week, whereas like I mean you can see there that like I think I was like a month into this split or something, and
yeah.
like Chal was still only 500. So I'm not really sure. Like for example, this 500 LP, I don't really know what that would mean in a regular season because
Mhm.
actually, when I came to EU before the reset, this account right here was 500 LP with 75% win rate, which I was really happy with.
Mhm.
And like because I had 75% win rate on Korea up to around like 350 LP. So I definitely think at least before the reset, that I felt like Korea was more difficult. Although you could say that like I improved in Korea and that's why Europe felt easier. But yeah, that was my peak rank there, 524 LP Chow.
So, I mean, it looks like you had no problems. You were kind of doing your thing. So, I guess talking about differences, things that you felt and noticed immediately off the bat. What were some of the differences that you experienced EU versus Korea specifically?
Yeah, so a big one, I guess, again, was the range supports. Like in Korea, there was melee supports all the time, and also like you were going to receive ganks all the time. And I think this is also like quite meta specific as well. Like, for example, I think if you actually go back to my previous split on this account here, yeah, just go back. So in the previous split, there was still a lot of melee sports being played, and my LeBlanc win rate was really high. I was like 500 LP, and my LeBlanc was just winning every game. I was like, okay, like this is the best gem in the game. Like we'll just keep using it. But then I noticed, like going into the next split, like suddenly there were like a lot less range support, or sorry, a lot less melee sports,
Yeah.
and there were a lot more range. And my LeBlanc win rate just nosedive. And I think that
Mm.
partially it could be that I got like a little bit unlucky, but I felt like I was receiving ganks all the time, and then suddenly I just wasn't getting ganks at all. And you can see that there, my Orianna priority went way up. Like I have a 72% win rate on Ori. And actually in Korea, I think I had a 33% win rate on Ori. So that's pretty crazy, kind
Yeah,
of.
look at that.
That,
Wow.
yeah, because I was starting to think in Korea, like, do I suck at this champ? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And then I went to EU and I was like, oh wait, no, I'm a fucking beast at this champ.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that is definitely something that it could be that it was just meta dependent, or it could be that EU as a whole like tends to
It's probably
prefer.
both, right? It's like
Yeah, it
multifaceted.
all adds up, I
It all
suppose.
adds
Yeah,
up. So it probably was the meta shifting because we did go into in Split 3 a much more mage heavy
yes,
kind of meta, right? Like Syndra, Rose, and probably like a lot of mages because all the 80 carry mids just died off, right?
yeah, they
They
disappeared.
basically
Yeah,
died off. So and Orianna was not good in that meta because you just couldn't really deal with a lot of those Tristanas and shit like that. So
yeah.
yeah, that so look, it's probably a combination, right? You got meta, you got server, probably sort of slight server differences there as well. So I guess it is hard to compare. It would only really be possible to objectively compare within the same meta, right? You would have to go immediately from Korea to
Yeah,
in the same patch, but that's obviously hard to do.
yeah, and I think also, like even just for comparing the servers, like you could argue that like even though I spend the same amount of time in each server, I only spend like 1 month essentially in each EU split, because like being say like 75% win rate, 500 LP, kind of at the end of the split, I was like, that 500 LP is very different to the 500 LP that I have right now. So
True.
yeah, it's very hard to actually even now. Even though I felt like EU is quite a bit easier, I still don't really know what rank I should be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like 1,000 LP Korea, I still don't know really what that translates to in EU. I'm not sure.
Interesting. Did you feel as though at least the laners that you were versing mechanically, did you notice any difference, like just in terms of the lane phase?
Yes, I think the landing phase was incredibly easy. Like I think coming from Korea, like it just felt like, and I mentioned this in so many videos that like people just had no idea how to play the matchups compared to Korea. Like one that I played all the time in Korea is I played both sides of LeBlanc Lissandra like over and over and over. And there was
Mm,
like a bunch of like really specific things that you needed to know. Like Lissandra kind of had to have bone plating, and like, LeBlanc, a lot of LeBlancs would go like Aryan stuff, but it was often better just to run electrocute. And there were like, I don't know, all these little things like Lissandra should actually win levels like 1 and 2 because of the shorter cooldowns, but then like, LeBlanc actually wins the 1v1 from there up until around level 9. But, then there'd be another thing like, well, for LeBlanc not to die in skirmishes, she needs to kind of go mercs. But like if LeBlanc goes mercs, she does no damage. So there was, lots of these little things. And I would notice like when I played this matchup that like, even if someone was doing some things well, they'd be failing the others. Like, oh, this LeBlanc's actually playing pretty well. And then she would buy Sork shoes and get ulted every fight, and it's just like, that's like a game knowledge thing. But especially, in the laning phase, like knowing when to trade and like why and, what makes it good. I felt like the laning phase on EU was so easy compared to Korea.
yeah, right. So that because that's a really tricky. Like I've always been on the fence about Lissandra into LeBlanc, and I've had I just out of interest, I'm curious about it. So in terms of Lissandra into LeBlanc, I've never really had a ton of success versus a competent LeBlanc playing for shove. It feels
Hmm.
like every time I play for shove and Lissandra into LeBlanc, like because you think, oh, I can theoretically get shove. I have a little bit more wave clear. I can have lower cooldowns. I can like play it. But every single time it's like, yes, I get level 2 first. It's like you don't really do much with it. And then you get shove, you get then the waves on the Blanc side, and then it feels terrible. Like I've always found that with Lissandra, it's not a lane counter, it's just a team fighting skirmishing counter. So like the mindset as Lissandra that I've developed, I mean, again, this is probably very not the level you're playing it at, but my experience, it's like you kind of I feel like it's a bit of a people play it in a way where it's like you're this lane counter, and I feel like if the LeBlanc's competent, it's not, and you're better off actually kind of keeping the wave neutral or even slightly on your side, and just kind of just chilling and then farming and then trying to scale and it's really using the minions to block E's, spacing the W, and just really being intentional with your resets and leveraging your high wave clear to get just insta resets. What's your kind of take on the matchup, just to get more?
Yeah, I think from like an outcome point of view, I agree with you. Like, I don't think Lissandra is ever going to like have a lead over LeBlanc. And I would say like if you're even in lane as LeBlanc, or sorry, as Lissandra versus LeBlanc, I would say you're winning. I think
Yeah.
that like LeBlanc in the 1v1 should be able to build up a big lead. But I think it's also really important that Lissandra does take advantage of those windows, because if she doesn't, like, she's not going to be able to stay even. Like, I think it
Mhm.
is really important that Lissandra wins level 1 and therefore has push over waves 2 and 3, because like if you don't, you're going to take too much damage during that time. And like if you end up, even though like you're happy about being even, you want to be ahead on the first base because you're going
Mhm.
to fall behind
Like
as it
post
goes
six, you're
on.
screwed. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you need to kind of start slightly ahead in order to make sure that you can just kind of finish up even at around 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, interesting. Um, okay, so that was like your EU. I mean, I guess talking about EU, I mean, I guess there's not too much to talk about. Obviously, you shifted your champ pool, meta shifted a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, were there any other interesting observations about Europe, like in terms of just the way draft, like just what you noticed in terms of like drafting, pick order, just the way games played out? Did they go longer? Were they
Hmm.
slower? Was there anything that?
Yeah. Definitely quite a bit slower, I think, than Korea. It's not like slow paced by any means, but just because there is like less ganking because of the champs, and like less roaming from support, and like they're not as good at punishing side lane, and everyone's like a little bit weaker at laning, that just generally slow down the game a fair amount. And I felt that like a lot of times on Korea, I had the feeling of like you know, I if I don't play a champ that's like good in the first 15 minutes, then there's going to be even if that can be like good win rate wise overall, I have to be like willing to accept that there are going to be like many games that are just lost before I have the chance to have impact. And I didn't really feel that in EU. There weren't that many games that were literally just like 15-minute GGs. And again, a lot of time in Korea, people always say like maybe you shouldn't have the 15-minute FF, or maybe shouldn't have FF at all, and that's a different discussion. But there were times in Korea where I'd be like at 8 minutes, and I'd be thinking like, damn, I really wish you could FF at 8 minutes, because this game was like completely fucked.
Yeah.
But I didn't really have that in EU. Like it didn't really have any games that were just super blown up. So yeah, I think EU is like more similar to NA in terms of playstyle, but the skill is still pretty high. Yeah.
So I guess reflecting on your experiences, then you got Korean, you got EU. You went through NA. You said in 20, was it 2019?
2019, yeah.
So obviously that was quite a while ago, but you did go there and do your boot camp. Now, do you remember what were your experiences in NA? I know you got pretty high challenger in NA, right?
Yeah. So in NA, I got rank 13. And that was actually, I had already been to Korea that year. And what
Mm.
was funny is that, like, at the time, I think in 2019, I was like 250 LP master on Korea, which,
Wow.
back then the LP was lower. Like rank 1 was only like 1200 LP or something. But still, I was like a master player on Korea. And then I was rank 13 on NA, which was
Yeah.
pretty wild to me. I think I was 1064 LP on NA. And my feeling was that NA was basically just OC with like faster queue times. Like it's definitely, yeah, I don't know, like faster queue times and like having more people on roll and stuff. Like it does make the game quality definitely higher. But I think there is like a pretty big gap between NA solo queue and like EU or Korea.
Now that we're on that, and I've heard this so many times. I know King mentioned this as well, and a few other people gone to NA. It sounds, and again, people from NA probably get pissed at this, but a lot of the people from OS say the exact same thing. It's funny you said that. They all say it feels like OS. So to get more specific, what I've heard is because I haven't played on NA since like season 3 or some shit.
Okay, it's a long
Um,
time.
long time, so I can't really comment. But from what I've heard, what people always say is they say, for the most part, it feels identical. But then you get these games here and there where like there's like a lot of high level plays, and you just don't get those in OS. Like,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
that's
Like, so
probably true. Yeah.
it's like majority, like 95% of the games are like identical, but then you have like those lobbies at the high chow where it's like you got a bunch of high level players, and like because there's more high level players in NA than OS, you get these lobbies here and there that it's like, okay, you just won't get this game quality in OS. And the
Yeah.
argument that I've heard is that OS has some good players, but there's just not many of them. right? Like I think even now to this day, like I think we got some good players here and there. You've got, I mean, at the moment, it's not too bad because you have like I think Lost and FBI or whatever, and in O's you have like I think Kyosei is a very good
Yeah,
laner.
Killer is good.
Kyosei is very good. You get like Kisei when he plays is quite good, there's some players here and there like Biopanther, Cupcake, etc. When you get those lobbies, the stars align. You can get some pretty high level games, but they're so uncommon that you just don't get those super high level games. Whereas in NA, there would be just more. There's more of them. There's, let's
More
say in
frequency.
NA,
Yeah.
yeah. So let's say there's like 50 high level players in NA, right? And OS is like 15 or 10 or whatever the hell it
Let's use
is.
10 to make it easy. Yeah.
Is 10. It's just like it's way less common. Um, but yeah, it's funny. Would you agree with that sentiment or not? Or no?
Yeah, actually, I think that is a good way of putting it. Like, you're right. Like, it's probably for the most part the same, but NA probably does have like I don't know if you'd call it exactly higher highs, but at least like the
Frequency.
very high level games, like, yeah, happen far more often, which I think is, yeah, that seems right to me.
So I guess, now you're back. You've done this whole boot camp. What are some things that you're going to actively, I guess, try to do to better yourself in solo queue? Like, how are you going to take this experience and maybe try and level up your own gameplay? Like, what are some areas that you want to focus on?
Yeah, so there's a few things. One is definitely like champ pool and off roll. Like, I think I've always kind of got by on off roll because, like,
Mm.
even though I think I'm like capable of playing the roles, I don't really have like champs. It'd more be like I play like Cassio top or bot, and then like if I play support, I'd just play like LeBlanc support or Lulu or something. But I think I really do need to invest into having like an actual off roll, which will probably be ADC, because I'm pretty comfortable playing that already. But yeah, so that's one of them. I think, yeah, champions in general, I think I probably need more AD champs in my champ pool, because I think there are some champs I played, like Jace, for example, but like Jace is not pickable mid every game. So I definitely have to invest into something like, a Yone or something that can
Yeah,
be
learn
played
Yone.
a little
You
more
should learn
often.
Yone.
Yeah, probably is the play because he is super broken, I think. In terms of gameplay, I think, I don't know, it's so hard because I think like, I mean, even now, I still watch like quite a few VODs and like look at laning phase and stuff, but it's so much easier to learn this stuff when you just like play against someone that's better than you. It's
Yeah.
like it's just handed to you on a silver platter. So I actually think some of what I'll do is because I saved, all my VODs from Korean EU, especially like the important ones, is I'll like really go back and kind of like look with a fine tooth comb, like what exactly are they doing that is like making the gap feels so big, because I have like lots of these games saved, basically tagged like for review later on, where I can like really look at them and like properly study them. So I'll probably do that. And one other thing is kind of on the mental side. So one thing I wanted to try in EU is I wanted to play two different accounts because I had the feeling that like I played a lot better off stream than I did on stream, which is a pretty common sentiment. I think a lot of people feel like that, but I've always like haven't really been sure why. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't sure if it was like, okay, well, I don't feel like nervous. I don't feel like people watching me is like making me play worse. And I didn't really feel like reading chat like was making me play worse either. Because like I feel like I talk a lot when I like record games as well. So I didn't feel like it was that sort of thing. And so I was like very confused about that for a long time. And actually, at the very end of my journey, I started playing on the off stream account again. I actually got into some real high low lobbies. Like I played against like Agron like 3 times, I think, on my last day or whatever. Like very high LP chow games. And I was like winning and performing well in basically all of them. And that like really made me think like, is it actually a stream issue or is it like a mental issue? And I think the thing I kind of decided, or like what is my current thing, is I think that when you're trying to like reach a goal, like when you're trying to reach Jal, you're trying to, reach rank one or whatever, at least for me, I felt that like I would play worse, and this is like made worse by being played on stream, because things that would tilt me more, or things that wouldn't tilt
Mhm.
me would tilt me. In other words, like I was more fractious, like when I'd have something bad happen, it would like really piss me off, and like if I'm off stream, I could go and like take a break or whatever, or I wouldn't have like people in chat also saying things about the thing that happened. So I kind of felt like at the end, like when all the pressure was off, right, because I got challenger in my main and now I was basically just playing for fun, I was playing so well, not because I didn't care, but because now it's like I remember in one of the games, like I got like 3-man ganked at like level 4 or something, and that would be the kind of thing that would like really annoy me and like would potentially impact my gameplay a lot. And I just like didn't really care, because I was basically just playing for fun at this point. So I actually think one of the big things I have to try and do is make sure that whatever my goal is, that even though like I can be like focused on it and like working towards it, that it's not so like all encompassing and that I have like nothing else in life, that it just ends up like consuming you so much that you actually like end up not being able to get it in a way. You know what I mean? Because like it just harms your mental state so much. And that makes me wonder a lot about like if I would have got Chow in Korea, if I just kind of like taken a step back and just like, played like 3 or 4 games a day at the end, and just like, if I won, great. And like if I didn't, like it's fine, sort of thing. So yeah, I don't know. It's something I definitely have to think about. And I'm not sure if I articulated it very well, but that's kind of like a lot of thoughts I had at the end of my journey.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot there to unpack. I mean, and quite honestly, it's just you're probably just going to have to do some, deep introspection. At the end of the
Yeah.
day, like, League has this funny way of just forcing. It makes you realize things about yourself that you didn't even know. Little things like,
Yeah.
and if you don't pay attention to those things, they just kind of persist over time, and they can be nasty. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like you definitely have there's something there that you probably need to explore, and just take your time, man. Just chip away at it. It might take you a week, month, might take you a few months. But I think just try things. Try playing off stream. Maybe try balancing. You might do some games on stream, some games off
Yeah.
stream, and look at the data. Right? I think just look at the data as well. Um, I would actually, by the way, just while you were mentioning as well, I would love to take a look at some of those VODs with you at some stage. Maybe we can do a VOD review content thing on your
Yeah, I'd be
channel.
down. I can make a collection of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and we can do some reviews.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Awesome. Well, I think that's basically the major things. I mean, pretty awesome discussion, and very insightful, and looking forward to seeing you in solo queue, get on the Rift, and
Yeah.
testing your new skills. And
Yeah.
yeah, appreciate your time, man. Thanks for coming on. Anything else you wanted to talk about, or?
No, not really. I guess thank you guys for listening to us yap for
Yeah,
however long this end up being. Yeah, no, it's always a pleasure. Thank you.
beautiful. All right, guys. Well, hope you enjoyed the discussion, and we'll see you for another video soon.
Bye
Cheers.
bye.